Good morning, everyone. Good to see people dialing in and joining for the call today. Um, if you don't mind, Valeria, let's just give it another 60 seconds or so because I'm getting some text messages here with people having trouble logging in.
Sure.
So I'll just try to give people a couple more minutes. Confusing for them to dial in.
Of course. So as people join us, just want to say good morning to everyone. My name is Valeria Bichelli. I'm here with my colleague Griselda Champagne. We are both with the Connecticut Small Business Development Center. We are giving a few more minutes for people to be able to join us. As I was mentioning before, if for any reason you were not muted upon entry, we ask that you do mute yourselves so that we can prevent accidental background noise and echo that could disrupt the sound quality. The way that we are going to handle this is that we're going to ask for you to type your questions into the chat so that we can review the questions after we go through some of the basic information. We will do our best to try and get to as many questions as we can within the time that we have allowed. But rather than having people accidentally speak over each other, it'll be a lot easier to handle the questions if you can type them on the chat.
Wonderful, thanks. I think a few more people have dialed in here. And Valeria and Griselda, I'm wondering if we could record this. I know we talked about possibly doing that. I don't know if you prefer to do that. Yep. Okay, great. So then anybody that misses out on part of, tune in and that would be great.
Yes, it has been recording. I will edit it later to remove. It started recording the moment that I started the meeting, which was about 17 minutes ago now. A lot of unnecessary stuff that we can remove.
Okay.
But once we're done with that, we can certainly share it.
Okay, great. So just in the interest of being time, we'll get kicked off here. I just want to say a quick hello to everyone. It's great to see that a bunch of you have called in today. I think just to summarize, our businesses collectively have been shut down, mandated shutdown since the 20th of March. So it's been quite a few weeks. I think ever since it happened, we've all kind of been grasping at straws to try to figure out, how are we going to survive financially on a personal level and also on a professional level. And I will speak on behalf of everyone in saying that, everyone is asking the right questions and being super diligent about taking advantage of what they have been told they could take advantage of, right? So we've applied for unemployment under the CARES Act. We have, in most cases, applied for the EIDL. Some of us have applied for the PPP. I think we've probably all heard more acronyms than we can keep straight.
But that tends to be the case.
Right, exactly. But everyone, is still sort of waiting. And I know that we're not alone in this. I know this is a lot of America's small businesses that are feeling like, when is this relief going to come? We're feeling left out. So just for all of our members as part of the My Salon Suite community, Jay and I had been reading about another program, which we're going to learn a little bit more about today. And as much as we are trying to gather information and kind of send over to everyone at My Salon Suite what might be relevant to you, we are certainly not experts and we cannot answer all of the questions. So we reached out to these lovely Connecticut Small Business Development Center. And I'm really happy we did, because not only are they going to give us a nice summary today of what's out there specific to this COVID-19 business response program, we're going to try to, at the end of this part of the, or at the end of the presentation, we're also going to talk a little bit more about PPP and EIDL and any other programs that we should be looking at. And then also just knowing that this organization and these two women can be a resource for all of us is really, I think, something that we need during this time, because we're all feeling like we need someone to kind of hold our hand through this and just tell us what we could be doing in order to move ahead and move forward. So with that, I'll hand it back over to Griselda to kick things off.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm not sure if Valeria was going to do an introduction, or I can just take it from here.
Well, I just want to make sure that for a lot of people, this is maybe the first time that you ever hear of the Connecticut Small Business Development Center. We joke often that, we're one of those, best kept secrets. So I just want to make everyone aware that during normal times, what we do is we're funded in part by the Small Business Administration and in part by the state in partnership with UConn. And we are tasked with providing no-cost advising through to small businesses throughout the state. We have a network of 14 advisors that provide advice, and is to people that are either starting or looking for strategies to grow their businesses. And of course, right now we're in emergency response mode, right? So we are trying to work with businesses across the state to help them figure out what resources are available to them, and to make sure that everybody understands what's the most appropriate combination of resources based on the specific circumstances that they have, as well as making sure that they use the funds appropriately so that they can properly take advantage of forgiveness and things that are available through some of these programs, which can often be pretty confusing. So all of the work that we do is taxpayer funded, is your tax dollars at work. So we don't charge for what we do. So you are welcome to sign up to work with any of us throughout the state. Excuse me, we usually allocate our resources by region. And because we may be overwhelmed, you may be working with people from all over the state, but we're working mostly remotely. We're not sitting down in person with anybody. So all of us are able to help you to make sure that you can access those resources and you can register at no cost for our services. So with that, Griselda, please feel free to go through the initial resource that we were going to share.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Valeria. And Carrie, thank you so much for inviting us. My name is Griselda Champagne. I usually sit in Bridgeport and cover Bridgeport and the surrounding towns. And first, we're going to start with a program called COVID-19 Business Response Program. This is a program that's being one of the ways that the small businesses can receive help through HEDCO. And we're going to get right to it. So what is it? So this program is a line of credit, and it's administered by an organization called HEDCO Incorporated. It's created in partnership with Government Lamont, the state of Connecticut, the CT Department of Economic and Community Development, and the CT Minority Business Initiative to provide financial relief for minority and women-owned businesses that have been impacted during this pandemic. So a lot of programs are out there. A lot of people are asking themselves, am I eligible? Does my business qualify? Like, can I apply? So in order to apply for this specific program, you have to be a minority-owned or women-owned for-profit business, which means that the ownership has to be at least 51% or more. So if you are in a partnership with 2 or 4 other people, you would just need to make sure that minority-owned or women-owned is at least 51% or more. The second requirement is that you must have 20 employees or fewer. So yes, if you're, a single sole prop or an LLC and it's just you qualify. It just has to be 20 employees or fewer. You must also be able to provide what they call a letter of good standing, which means that you are up to date in your taxes with the Department of Revenue Services, DRS. And then the last requirement for this specific program that is outlined in their eligibility is that you must have been in business for at least 6 months. Right, and then so this specific program, all the different programs are providing a different type of relief. This one consists of a line of credit. Now on the application, it'll ask you, how much you would like to apply for. This specific line of credit is available for up to 20,000, but just because you apply for the 20,000, it doesn't mean that that's what you will get. Once you apply and they assess your situation and the information that you provide them with, they'll be able to take a look at how much funds you would be eligible for. The interest rate for this credit line is 0%, and the term is for only 12 months. There is no application fee, but there is a $250 closing fee, which they have been nice enough to be able to allow you to include as part of the cash flow, a statement that you would provide, which we'll talk about possibly in the next slide, so that those funds don't have to come out of your pocket. For those that are not familiar with some of the lending terms, I just want to clarify what a credit line is. A credit line works very much like your typical either home equity line of credit or credit card, where you can draw as you need. So it's not a term loan like a card note would be, where you pay back principal and interest. A credit line usually has just an interest payment that's due on a monthly basis. One thing that I do want to mention about this is that it's available for 1 year, and that starts from your closing date. At the end of that year, it must be paid in full. So the allowed uses. So this program allows you to use this for any regular business expenses that would have been covered if the pandemic had not happened. The loans are not intended, though, to replace any lost sales or for expansion. So it's not the time to go out there and get new equipment or upgrade things. It is not what it's intended for. And then there is also a clause of forgiveness, which a lot of people have been asking about, which we're going to kind of clarify a little further. But in order to qualify for the loan forgiveness, the funds must be used on the projected expenses that you presented in your cash flow document. And again, we're going to talk about that a little further in the next upcoming slides. Now, so how do you apply? For those that don't know about HEDCO, if you visit their website, their URL address is HEDCOinc.com, and that's where you would apply. So all these different programs that are available right now have like their own individual way and for you to access them and apply for them. So for this specific one, it would be HEDCOinc.com. So you would apply through HEDCO directly. You would submit all of the necessary documentation to them, and the deadline for this one is soon to approach. It's actually April 30th. So I'm glad that we were able to have this call and get this out there to make sure that you guys get in there. As far as the documentation that you would need, this is what you would need. So there's a one-page application, which is super simple. It's available right on HEDCOinc.com. When you go to their loan programs and you choose the COVID-19 Business Response Program, you would see this. They have many other programs available, as they usually are a nonprofit lender that assists in other things, but this is the program that you're looking for this scenario. So it's a one-page application and a cash flow statement. The cash flow statement is only going to ask you for the next 3 months of projected income and expenses. You're also going to need some information from your prior year revenues. So they're looking for a profit and loss statement as of December 31st, 2019. If you have not filed your taxes, that's okay. If you use something like QuickBooks, you can download it right from there. Or if you can ask your accountant to help you out in producing that profit and loss statement for the end of last year, they will want that. And then they're also going to want to know how your business is doing year to date. So they'll ask for a profit and loss statement as of March 31st, which again, you can ask your accountant for some help. Sometimes you can print it off right off of QuickBooks or any other programs that you may use. The other requirement is that you provide evidence of being up to date with DRS, which is the Department of Revenue Services. What they're going to be looking for is something called the Letter of Good Standing. And don't panic, you can actually log online. You can request it and it's instant. You can get that right away and submit it to them. So you shouldn't have to wait days for this to arrive. So that's a good thing. And then the last thing is that you have to have evidence to support the needs you are stating in your cash flow statement. So you can kind of reference what your expenses and income were for the previous year and those income and expenses that you have for this year. You can kind of provide proof as best as you can. Now, what we're seeing with a lot of the applications that are being submitted for HEDCO and any other program is that some people think that getting it in as soon as they can is better than not getting it in at all. And the truth of it is that if the application is missing information or if it's incomplete, it cannot go to underwriting. So it gets put to the end of the line. So if you need help with either getting a second pair of eyes, making sure that you filled out all the fields appropriately at the Connecticut Small Business Development Center, we'd be happy to review your application and make sure that it's tip-top shape so that you are not put at the end of the line, because we've had quite a few clients come back and learn that their application is not complete and that they needed to furnish additional information. All right, so now what happens after you submit the paperwork? So once you submit the paperwork, the information is reviewed for completion, and then it's sent to underwriting through HEDCO. Once it's approved, they would go ahead and issue a commitment letter outlining they'll issue a commitment letter outlining terms and conditions. If there's anything at that moment that needs to be satisfied, they're just going to wait for you to go ahead and provide them with those. Then they'll be preparing closing documents and waiting for your signature. After that step, they should be able to issue a check with funds. All right, and then now going back to the portion about forgiveness, because a lot of people are saying, this situation is already having a negative impact in my business. I don't want to go ahead and, take out further lending that's going to put me in further financial trouble. This is not what I want to do. So to get the forgiveness, meaning you don't have to repay it, you have to apply for forgiveness and submit documentation providing you use the funds for the expenses that you listed in that cash flow statement. As approved under the terms of the line of credit. So if you're able to furnish that, you should be okay. If you use the expenses, if you use it for expenses other than those that you previously included, you will be responsible for paying back that portion of the loan. So again, in order to qualify for forgiveness, just make sure that you outline very clearly what you're going to be using this for. So think it through and then make sure that you apply for forgiveness afterwards. All right, so how do we help at the Connecticut Small Business Development Center? Again, like Valeria stated, we provide no cost advising. It's completely confidential, and we can guide you through any step. We also provide general advising. This is not the only thing that we do. The number one reason clients come to us is because they need to access capital, but we help with other things like reviewing your marketing strategies, succession planning, etc. It's just so much. You can feel free to visit our website to check out what else we can do. But there are 14 advisors around the state, and we all work and do the same type of work. We also do work with the WBDC. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but this is a good resource for you to take a look at as well. The Women's Business Development Council. They also do some counseling and SCORE, which you might be a little bit more familiar with, as well as the state and local economic development. So what we are doing now during this crisis or pandemic is that we're assisting all types of businesses, including for-profit and nonprofit businesses. Usually we only work with for-profit businesses, but in this case, we are helping nonprofit as well. And we work with 1099 contractors, self-employed at all times. to help them navigate through situations like this, or just for general advising. In the past, if you want to know a little bit more about our success, just last year, we were able to assist clients attain 49 million in capital, which again consists of lending, brokerage, fundraising, crowdfunding, all types of different investors and things, all types of different ways that we help. And then we also helped launch 140 new businesses in the year 2019. And we've been able to assist about 2,000 clients, as well as of which 1,500 or so received advising from us. Now, if you have more questions and you want to stay up to date with the resources that we have that are available for you and your business during this time, please take a look at our resource center. The link is right below this page. It's HTTPS and the rest of all the words down there. If you go to ctsb.com, in the top section, it'll say COVID-19 Resource Center. You would click on there, and that's the easiest way to remember. All right, so this is what our COVID-19 Business Resource Center looks like. And again, if you go to our website, this is where you would click. COVID-19 Business Resource Center. If you'd like to sign up for training with any of our pre-recorded videos, you can go here. And this is if you'd like to work with us. You can click on COVID-19 Business Advising and register so that we can start assisting you. And we usually pick you up from our queue within 24 hours. Usually we do that the same day as well. But here are like the different programs. We try to update with the latest on every program that's going on out there. And that's just what we wanted to kind of let you know about this program. Now, I'm going to let Valeria take over. She's going to talk about some updates and a little bit more about the PPP and the SBA EIDL. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Griselda. So I want to jump in first and answer a couple of quick questions about this. First of all is, will taking this line of credit impact my credit score, and is there a credit score minimum requirement? We have not heard of a minimum requirement of credit scores. If you notice, when you go to see the application itself, it does not actually require you to provide the type of information that you normally would for a hard credit check. They have not mentioned that in terms of, you know, if it was to impact your credit score in any way, it would only be like temporary, but they're not listing any of the requirements that normally would hit your credit with like a hard check, which is what normally affects the points on your credit. Will this interfere with anything we have already applied for or unemployment? It will not interfere with unemployment or EIDL. They do ask in the application, what else have you applied for? Simply so that they can allocate the funds to people that are not getting anything else, right? Not necessarily because you can't get both. You could get both. But for example, if you apply to EIDL and you apply for the grant portion, if you're a sole proprietor, you're probably going to only receive about $1,000, right? Versus somebody that has, you know, a few more employees, they will get a larger portion of that. And so, you know, they will take that into consideration when they're looking at, you know, the need out there and what people are presenting. The other question is, can we apply for forgiveness of these funds if we have already been approved and have plans to make those funds forgivable? So one is state, one is federal. So the forgivable portion of each does not interfere with each other. What you would want to make sure, though, is that you don't use it for the same things, right? So PPP, 75% of it needs to be used for what will be your payroll costs. So you want to make sure that you're not overlapping the use. So, you know, use the funds of this to maybe cover, you know, other types of expenses that you're not able to cover through PPP, since PPP is very restrictive in terms of its uses. So I'm going to take for a moment the role of presenter so that I can share my screen with you and cover briefly additional information related to some of the other programs that are available to you. Right. So in terms of programs available through the SBA, you have, as you have heard, you have the Paycheck Protection Program. You have the Economic Injury Disaster Loan and the Loan Advance that is up to $10,000. There's SBA Express Bridge Loans, and there's also some debt relief from SBA. Again, right now, because funding appropriations run out for what was allocated, none of these programs are actively taking applications. You can still submit a Paycheck Protection Program application to your bank, as most banks are still taking them, but it cannot be submitted to the SBA because the SBA is not able to have that open while the funds have run out. So as I'm sure you have heard that, you know, Congress is in the works to extend funding to all these programs, and some of it has already been approved. The details of the bill have not been released yet, so we don't know if there will be any kind of changes, but we do know that there's additional funding coming. And again, we're doing our best to update our COVID-19 Business Resource Center with the most recent information coming up. So all of the information about the federal programs, state programs, you can find it all there, including a guide that walks you through how to apply to a lot of these different resources. So we encourage you to visit that and keep checking on it, because whenever we receive updates about anything, you know, as soon as the funding, for example, becomes available again, we will make that public. The SBA will probably need a day at least to reopen its applications once the funding becomes available. So just important to know. And we will keep you posted through our website to make sure that everybody knows as those things are available. So Carrie mentioned some of you have applied to the Paycheck Protection Program, so I'm going to be brief on what it is. So as you know, it's a loan that is administered by the SBA, but it's done through approved lenders. Most of those are banking institutions. Also, recently, QuickBooks was approved to process paycheck protection loans. So if you have a QuickBooks payroll account, you can work through them as well. So most small businesses, again, with 500 employees or less qualify, which, you know, based on what I know of our audience, most of you will be able to qualify. And it's also open to sole proprietors, self-employed, and independent contractors. One of the important conditions is that you must have been in operation on February 15th. So if your business is newer than that, then you would not qualify. So the loans are up to 10 million with a flat rate of 1% for all applicants, regardless of credit scores. If you have to pay back, there is a 2-year maturity, so you have 24 months to pay. And there are no requirements for collateral or personal guarantees. You must use about 75% of it for what they call qualifying payroll expenses. And that includes health and leave benefits. So it's not just payroll. And you can also pay if you have, I mean, I don't think this applies to most of you. So in terms of mortgage, because it will be a business mortgage. But if you have like rent expenses, utility expenses, and you have some debt that was incurred prior to February 15 that you have to pay on an ongoing basis, you can cover the interest of that debt, not the debt itself. Similarly to all the other programs, none of these loans are intended for expansion. And And, you think it's funny because most of us are thinking, well, we're just trying to survive. What do you mean expansion? But you'd be surprised. Some people have actually asked, I was like refreshing my building. Can I use this, to continue doing that? No, you can't. And again, how you calculate the amount that you qualify for. If you are a sole proprietor or independent contractor and you are filing a Schedule C, or even, as an LLC, you can basically take the net of your Schedule C and use that as a qualifying payroll cost, as a qualifying cost overall. So you would add your qualifying payroll cost. There are some things that are excluded from that. Some people have a seasonal business, some people do not. I don't think in the salon business, it would be considered seasonal because you're probably all operating under normal circumstances year round. If you need more details as to what is included as qualifying and excluded, again, because we were only going to have a short amount of time to cover some of this, I did not include all of the details, but if you go to our Business Resource Center, there is something like 12 to 14 page guide, and it includes a very detailed list of what qualifies and what doesn't qualify, including how it's looked at for independent contractors and sole proprietors and the calculation from based on your Schedule C. The other thing that you have is access to the economic injury disaster loan. The disaster loans are usually available for the most part for physical disasters, right? When there's a hurricane, where there's tornadoes, things like that, flooding that have affected different parts of the state. So it's unprecedented for this program to have to be used on a national basis, which is why people have heard a lot about there being delays on the funding of this program, the processing of the applications, et cetera, because the SBA is not generally staffed. Even though they've added additional people, they're not generally staffed to handle the level of volume that you would get from a national disaster. The loan portion itself is a low interest working capital loan, and this is done directly through the SBA. You do not go through a bank. You have to meet the size standards for SBA, which again, under 500 employees for small businesses. And there are some in here that don't usually qualify that have been expanded, including again, sole proprietors, self-employed, and independent contractors. The loan itself is up to $2 million. It is a repayable loan, so this does not have an option for forgiveness. It is at 3.75 for small businesses with a term up to 30 years, and there is no collateral required. If you were to request anything over $200,000, then you will be required a personal guarantee, but anything under that, it's not. And it's usually $25,000 that they require a personal guarantee. So because of the magnitude of the disaster, they made some changes to that, which I think is positive, particularly for the smaller businesses. So the use of these loans is a little more flexible than the use of PPP, right? So you can pay debt, fixed debts. You can pay payroll like you can do with PPP, but if you're taking both, you would want to make sure that you don't overlap pay periods, right? You don't pay yourself for the same amount of time with two different pockets of money. That could get you in trouble. But you could also cover things accounts payable and other bills that would have been paid if you didn't have the issues of the disaster. So again, PPP is a lot more restrictive. If you have a wider variety of expenses, this is a little more flexible in that term. But again, it's not forgivable, right? PPP is, this one is not. So you also have the cash advance that you've heard of, the grant that is up to $10,000. Now again, the caveat is that it's up to $10,000. It doesn't mean that if you apply, you will get $10,000. So the grants are backdated to January 31st. And you're able to, even if you applied for a loan, disaster loan, you're also eligible to receive the grant. You could also apply for the grant only and not apply for the loan. Because this is a grant, it is forgivable as long as you use it for what is allowed to be used, right? Like, you know, not that anybody in here would do that, but you know, you can't go and buy a new car and expect that, you know, the grant portion will get forgiven based on that. It is simple. It is simply making sure that you're using it for the same things that the loan is allowed to be used for: fixed debts, payroll, accounts payable, and other related bills. This is a brief comparison of the Paycheck Protection Program versus the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. And again, some of the highlights is, you know, looking at the different uses that you can have for each. And the fact that, you know, you have interest for one that is higher than the other one. But, you know, the Paycheck Protection Program can be potentially forgiven up to 100% as long as you use it within those allowable uses. There is no payment for the first 6 months, but then if you do have to repay anything back, you have 24 months to pay that. With the injury disaster loan, you do have a higher interest rate if you take the actual loan itself. But there are no payments for a whole year, and you can get longer terms than 2 years, depending on the amount that you borrow. It could be up to 30 years. So again, depending on what you need the funds for, it might be worth exploring one or the other or both. And again, you still have that up to $10,000 cash advance that does have that forgiveness portion. There's a bridge loan that is intended to help you get access to funds a little faster. And if you borrow from the disaster loan, you can roll that into the disaster loan to get a lower rate. This is like a much higher interest rate and only up to $25,000, but it's designed to supplement that disaster loan. And if you need money faster, it could be something that could help somebody on an emergency basis. And then I'm not going to cover the same things that, you know, Grisela just covered with the other presentation. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and go back to the main screen so that we can potentially answer some of the questions.